Howdy, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Truth Defender podcast. We are coming to you from the greatest country in the world, deep in the heart of the Lone Star State, Dallas, Texas. I'm your host, Paul Aguilar. We really appreciate you guys stopping in for another episode. If you guys are catching us on YouTube and you aren't already a subscriber, please consider hitting that subscribe button, as well as clicking that thumbs up button and turning on the bell icon so you guys won't miss an episode in the future. If you guys are on the go and you want to check us out, please check us out on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, as well as iHeartRadio at Truth Defender Podcast. We'll have all the links to social media down below, Twitter, Getter, Instagram, Facebook, and Rumble. If you guys have any questions or comments for myself or our guest or topic recommendations, you can shoot us an email at thetruthDefender1776@gmail.com. Everybody, really appreciate you guys stopping in. I know we've been kind of in the works, trying to figure out some things on our end. We're on a new platform, so we might not be coming through all too well. If you guys are having issues trying to catch us or kind of hearing us as well, please go ahead and let us know so that we can get everything sorted out. But we're back with another episode this week. We'll be back next week as well. We'll have another one on Friday. We'll be having Jason McLean back on as well to go over kind of what's been going on in the Ukraine and all that whole issue out there. So stay tuned for that as well. But our next guests, Dave and Carla, are like-minded souls. They have been close friends since 1998. The two have a spiritual kinship that has taken them through 29 past lives. The story they tell in The Gift of Past Lives with Mother Isabel, God and Elizabeth aims to liberate people from the traps of conceit, jealousy, and selfishness, and choose love in all actions. Without further ado, Dave and Carla, how are you doing today?
Great.
Doing great today, Paul. How are you?
I'm doing great. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to hop on with me today. I was really looking forward to this. Now, past lives has been something that I've been extremely interested in for a long time. As a Roman Catholic, it's something that I've always kind of, I guess, had in the back of my mind, and I've heard people speak of it, but I just kind of wasn't too sure if it was like a real thing or not. I've had instances where I've spoken with people that have sworn that they've been someone or other in a past life. I've even spoken with a kid, I think it was like a cousin of mine one time, that was kind of, I guess, remembering past lives or instances of past lives, things that are happening or that did happen in their past lives. At that time, I was a little younger, didn't really understand what it was, what it meant, if it all was real or not. But, those stories were still there. So it was always kind of a weird thing for me. But before we kind of jump into that, can we kind of go over the origin story here of how you guys actually met? Because I know you guys have been in each other's lives for thousands of years, but how did you guys get hooked up in this current form?
Well, what happened in 1998 is I bought the medical practice where Carla was the office manager. And so that's where we thought we met each other for the first time.
Right.
And now what happened later is we started electronic medical records, and it got extremely stressful to be a physician. I was pulling my hair out. I've lost some of it. And Carla came up one day and said, we started this electronic medical records. You're burned out. You aren't fun anymore. And you've got to try to do something. Maybe we should try some meditation. So we started to meditate in the office. Carla read some interesting material.
I actually had read an article in AARP magazine that was talking about all the benefits. I'm only 39, so, I don't get it at the house. The benefits of meditation were so many, but I thought it was something that could help us if we meditated as an office. So we did. Right. The first day we had the other office girls come and meditate with us. And we all spoke afterwards about how difficult it was to shut your mind off, but it was relaxing. And then the second day, we all remarked afterwards about the different colors that we were seeing during meditation. Now, our form of meditation was just to sit in a quiet room with music and dimly lit with a candle and just shut our brains off from all the, bombardment of the electronic everything. And so on that third day, the girls said, oh, we don't really want to meditate and come in this early. We'll do it at home. So on that third day, it was just Dave and I. And about a half an hour after we began meditating, we heard the patients coming in. So we got up and we went into our adjoining offices, and Dave came up behind me and he said, Carla, I know you're going to think I'm crazy, but I think I was just talking to your mother while we were meditating. Now, he got my attention. He never met my mother. She had died 18 years before.
Right.
And the fact that she had come to him and not me, I was like, wait a minute, what's going on here? But I said to him, well, how do you know it was my mother? And he said, well, she looked like you from side view. She was real jovial. She was laughing and she kept showing me a shoe. So I went over to the computer and I Googled ballroom dancing shoes, and like 60 or 70 pair came up on the screen. And I said, which shoe? And he walked over and he pointed to the exact shoe that my mother had worn. She was a ballroom dancer and she wore those same shoes, kind of a short pump, open-toed sandal for church or to dress up. And my sister was also working in the office at the time. And she took a photo from her wallet and she turned it around and showed Dave. And she said, is this who you were talking to? And Dave got really emotional. And he said, yes, that's who I was talking to.
So that was strange. And I thought, okay, I'm a doctor, but I've lost my mind and I'm talking to dead people. All right. So, but everybody wanted to keep meditating. Paula and Carla wanted to see if they could reach their mother again. We kept meditating every day. And there was a day when I had this memory pop in from 1962. Now, in 1962, I was 3, so I'm a little older than you, Paul. But
just a couple of years.
Yeah, but in 1962, my father went to graduate school from Nebraska, where we lived, to Boston. And we drove across the country. I remembered the long drive and getting earaches, and we were going over the mountains in Pennsylvania, and we got to Boston. And I was telling Carla that I just started to remember this while meditating. And I said it was so strange because I started to remember running on a beach in Boston. And I could see the Ferris wheels in the background, and I could see roller coasters, and I saw souvenir shops, and I was running, and this little girl ran over and pushed me down. And she sat on my chest, and she gave me a kiss in the middle of the forehead. She jumped up, screamed, "You've got to be quiet. You're bothering my family." She put her hands on her hips, and she had this little blue 2-piece ruffled bathing suit on with a little tiny pot belly because she was so young. And Carla stopped me right there.
And first of all, my sister and I simultaneously said, when were you in Boston? We had been working with him since 1998, and he never mentioned it. So first of all, that was a surprise. But that day was etched in my mind because I was from the good Catholic family also, the youngest of 6 girls.
Living in Boston, by the way.
Living in Boston, born and raised. And my parents were, always getting separated but never quite divorced. We didn't have any money. We didn't have a car. On that particular day, Daddy rented two cabs and took all of us down to the beach. And for whatever reason, when we got there, I didn't have a bathing suit. Normally, one would have been passed down to me from my sisters, but I didn't have one. So we went across the street to a souvenir shop, and they really could not afford it, but they bought me my first brand new 2-piece blue ruffled bathing suit. And if you can imagine, I remembered that forever because it was new clothing and a 2-piece bathing suit, and I never had that happen. So, there was another moment where Dave and I were like, wow.
We're looking at each other going, wow, we met when we were 3 and 4 years old. And we didn't know it because we didn't meet again for 38 years. Ooh. So that kept us pretty interested in why are these memories coming? And we just kept meditating. And I started getting pictures and places and symbols. And then one day I saw another woman, and she introduced herself as Isabella. And she said she'd been with me for 6,000 years. Well, I'm like, okay, this is pretty, again, strange for me.
Your spirit guide.
And Isabella told me she was my spirit guide. So, Paul, I was raised Catholic too, just like Carla, just like you. And I thought, okay, I've conjured something up. I'm a strange person. I've either that or I'm losing my mind. These electronic medical records have gotten to me. But the next day meditating, I had another memory. Now, good things happen with meditation. I'll tell you. We found out, because I'm a doctor, I went out and researched it, and it lowers your blood pressure and lowers your blood sugars. It increases dopamine and serotonin, which helps decrease your depression and anxiety. It actually lowers cortisol. And the first year that I started meditating, I sort of set a goal that I was going to try to lose a couple pounds. So I set a goal to lose 2 pounds a week. And a year later, I lost 104 pounds.
Wow.
So the meditation was doing good things for me. Mm-hmm. But the next memory I had was I was suddenly standing in an alley. And it was dark. And across the alley, I could see this woman. And I knew it was Carla. Now, when I say I knew it was Carla, it reminded me of Carla. She had the same steel blue eyes. She was younger than I had known her. She had her hair slicked back, and she had on this little gold band on her head, and she had fringed, ruffled,
fringe.
Yeah, skirt.
Flapper attire.
Flapper. She looked like a flapper. And suddenly I saw 2 bright flashes, and then I heard bang, and then I felt myself hit in the chest, and realized I'd been shot in a dark alley. I told Carl again, thinking, I don't know what this is. This is some sort of strange dream. And the next day I was meditating, and I got more of the same story. But this time I found out where I met this woman, and I had met her at a wedding at Ashland Auditorium in Chicago in 1925. And when she was the wedding singer, I had to meet her. So I met her at the reception and invited her to breakfast the next day, and she went to breakfast with me. And then I had more of the memory, and I took her out on a walk along the Chicago coastline in 1925 in January. It was cold. It was miserable. She was clinging to me. She was telling me about her life story and how she'd moved from Bullock, Georgia, and her name was Ruby Donaldson. She wanted to be a singer and a dressmaker. She told me her father's name was James, and he was mad since the Civil War. She'd gotten away from there. And I found out that she worked at a speakeasy named DeAndre's for a man named Angelo.
So, like anybody, when he told me this story, I wanted proof if it was possible. And you know, a lot of our past life memories and other people that talk about theirs are so far back, it's hard to get any corroborating information. But this was only in the 1920s, so it was possible. So I went to Ancestry.com, and I did find Ruby Donaldson, born in Bullock, Georgia in 1904, to James and Anna Donaldson, one of 11 children. So that information was all corroborated. And then I found newspaper articles from the Chicago wedding on January the 10th, 1925 at Ashland Auditorium of Angelo Jenna to Lucille Spinola. And there were pictures of the wedding and the wedding cake. And I was able to tell Dave that I found the information. We did not understand at the time that Angelo Jenna was the head mobster in Little Italy right before Al Capone. And he worked at, or I should say he owned, or he didn't really own it. He ran DeAndre's, the speakeasy, and that's where Ruby was the singer and the dancer.
So here we're pretty much convinced that we're having an experience that's real, Paul. We started running. We started looking for information. We started doing research. We found research by Ian Stevenson and James Madlock and Jim Tucker that had been going on at the University of Virginia Department of Perceptual Studies for years. And they had about 2,500 cases of kids with verified past life memories who they proved or they believe they proved that they were the people they claimed to be when they were 3 or 4 years old. And they only study kids because they figure adults can fake it. But they didn't think a 3-year-old could possibly know who Jim Smith is from some small town 30 miles away. And they would go and they would study these kids. They would study the past lives. They found birthmarks in the same place that these people had died, and those kind of research items. And so they became literally convinced. And then they would start things like they would find out who the guy was married to in a past life, and then they would bring 5 pictures of women. They would show the 5 pictures to the little boy who said he remembered being them, and say, which one was your wife? Which one was your dog? Which house did you live in? And show pictures of houses. And they would come up with 20 questions, something like that. And the kids were getting 85% correct, which is way above what you would expect. So we started to think, well, maybe this isn't so strange.
Yeah, that's definitely, it's kind of I guess, in your experience, is it more, I guess, more relevant with children as it is adults? Because I've heard lots of stories with adults, but I mean, it's more interesting when it comes from like a child, in my eyes.
Yes, the child can't be coached at 3 years old.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely been my experience. Now, I guess one of the questions I've always had surrounding reincarnation is does like tragic or I guess violent death more of like a cause for reincarnation, or is, because I've always, whenever you hear these kinds of stories, like it's always that they died violently, like in their past life, or they had some kind of accident, and those seem to be more of like the prevalent. Right. Okay. Yeah. It's just always
that's what seems to surface, because just like in regular life, a humdrum day you don't normally remember. But if something significant happens, you remember it. And a lot of people, just like in Dave's case, what was the memory? Him being shot.
Right.
That's what he remembered. And so, and many times there's lessons to be learned from the adversity that happened. And it comes to the surface because there's something you need to learn from it.
Right. And I've always been kind of a believer in when we all say that we've had deja vu, would that tie in anywhere? Like maybe that came from like a past life, you remember being in a certain area, or is that something kind of completely different?
No,
that's the exact same kind of experience. Many people have the deja vu, and yes, it could be something you did in this life. But if you did something in a past life, it's the same thing when you meet somebody, Paul, and you think, why does it seem like we can talk for 3 hours and we just met? It's because you're already comfortable because you've met them before in some other life.
And it's not coincidence that I have vacationed in Bermuda, Italy, Scotland, Asheville, North Carolina, and I've had a life in all of those places because we have a draw to those places.
So you'll yeah, and it was kind of interesting because I didn't even know some of the places Carla had been, and I started having more and more memories, and we started cataloging them and writing everything down that had happened to us. And the day I said I remember this temple, and it's a big temple, and it's hot, and it's like Yucatan Peninsula. It's warm, and Paula goes, "Well, it's the temple of Chichen Itza," and she goes, "And we've been there," and I'm like, "Oh wow, okay." So we started having memories like that. Then we found lives together in those places. We finally found 42 past lives for me, and 34 for Carla, and 29 of them that we shared. Now, we shared them frequently as love interests, but she's also been my mother, my sister, my neighbor, just a friend, a child that was in the room, or a school friend, in many different capacities. But in all those ways, we worked well together. And so we slowly discovered, and then we read more information. We found that we always return in soul groups. And your soul groups can be divided into two kind of groups. It's either family mates, those who we do well with and assist each other, or karmic mates, which are those people that might test us in each and every life.
Right.
And the goal is to actually get all those
it's
karmic mates to become family mates so that we're not being tested by each other.
Sure. Yeah. And it's so, I mean, I'm assuming now I've spoken with people in the past that say, you know, the reason why we keep coming back to Earth, or, you know, at any point in time, is we're here to learn, to, I guess, experience things throughout life that'll help us kind of move on from, I guess, this Earth or wherever. Is that kind of the case in your experience?
Yeah.
That
Think of it this
we're
way.
only here for certain things.
Think of it this way. Yeah. Think of it this way, Paul. When your soul or consciousness was created, you really had no experience in the spiritual or unseen realm, or whatever you would like to call heaven, depending on your terminology. You start to see that everything and all communication is really telepathic. If you have no experience, you have nothing to share. Right. And so you know, if you're really speaking in pictures and etc., you have had to have something that you perceived in the past through either sight, smell, taste, any of your senses. That way you can actually share those things telepathically with others. So you have some sort of shared experience, which is really what all communication is shared experience. So being here on Earth is a shared experience that we all have. So it's something we can share with each other when we're not here.
Right. So, I mean, in that sense, what would be, I guess, in your mind, the reason why we're not allowed to kind of remember past lives? I mean, if we are here to experience these kinds of things and learn from them, like, why is it that we just aren't allowed to just kind of remember, like, we've been here before and this is what we took away from our past time here? Is it kind of like a collective, I guess not a collective, but we're only supposed to be experiencing like certain things that like maybe once per lifetime, or just kind of not to like overwhelm us?
Exactly, overwhelming, because Dave and I have a big board with all of our past lives on it.
Sure.
And we have these specific details, but even with all of this information, it's really difficult to remember, just now. And even though you'd think we would remember all of them, you forget. And if you're here to learn and not make the same mistake, just like your teacher in school, they give you a test to make sure you've learned it. You can say, oh, I know that, but they give you a test to make sure that you've learned it. In our first book, we actually put 20 of our past life stories, and at the end of each one of those stories, we give the reason that we have to return, what we didn't learn in that life. And in our second book, Hell No, Reincarnation, there's 7 of our past lives, again with the same thing. We put the reason that we didn't quite pass the test, why we were coming back, because we're not perfect. We've been here over 6,000 years. You start from square one when you come back, but deep in your soul, you know right from wrong.
Yeah, I can't remember everything from this life, Paul, let alone 42 past lives. And it gets to the point, and this is why they think that, because kids who have these spontaneous memories, they remember things at 3, 4, and 5, and most of them start to forget at 7, 8, and 9. Because they've had so many life experiences in this world that those become less important. They don't remember them. Now, what we believe, because we also took past life regression training, even though our memories were spontaneous, we really believe everything is saved in your subconscious. And it sort of works like this. The subconscious saves everything as a positive or negative experience. That way, in this life, if you are faced suddenly with that same problem, if it was a negative experience, it will help you respond, just like your subconscious helps you now. If you touch something that's hot and it burns you, the next time you touch something that's hot, you pull back faster. And that's saved in your subconscious now.
Right.
If your past life memories are, and you're about to go into a dark alley where you might be shot by a mobster, maybe I won't walk down a dark alley in this life. Okay? So those things will kind of help you. Does that make some sense, Paul?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. It's it's just always kind of weird. I mean, I guess you have parts of your subconscious that kind of seep into your world now, just as we discussed, like deja vu. Maybe you remember something from a life during this time period. Maybe you came back just recently, or whatever. Obviously, if you had a past life where you were like some kind of king in Egypt or something, that wouldn't kind of transfer over. But you always have. I'd always been kind of frustrated with the fact that I was aware of my consciousness in this time frame, like in this life, but I could never like kind of remember if I had ever had anything else prior. And that always kind of frustrated me because I had always believed in reincarnation, since I was little, but it just had always gotten to me that I could never kind of like piece things together or maybe kind of remember what I was previously. And even in those lives kind of shape what you're going to be in this life. Obviously, like you said, some people like traveling to areas that are cold. Maybe in their past life, they were born like in Alaska or something, or some people like to, like to vacation, stuff like that. And that's the reason why they like these kinds of movies or this kind of music, because maybe in a past life they were from there.
Yes.
It's all very interesting. I could just never get over the fact that we're just not allowed to kind of remember, for whatever reason, but it's just always been one of those things in my mind.
Do you meditate, Paul?
I do not meditate. I don't even know why I've never really gotten around to it. It's just, there's just so much going on. I think I would actually benefit from it, but I've just never gotten to it. I would like to learn
you
how
need
to
to add it.
With the
Yeah, it's easy to do. You just need to add it to your regular routine. I like to do it first thing in the morning after I'm already rested so that I don't fall asleep. But if you just added 20 minutes every morning, make the time like working out or like eating or showering, just make the time, add it in there because the benefits are great. And that's how you open up to the spiritual world.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely been I guess it's been something that I've thought about for a long time. And I just, for whatever reason, never got around to it. I mean, I make time to go to the gym all the time. That's kind of my meditation in a weird kind of chaotic way, but it would definitely benefit me to kind of flesh my mind out at times and just not think about stuff. But we'll definitely have to put it down one of these days to just kind of jump in. I think the more I say that I'm going to do something, I don't do it. So I just have to do it one day.
So, Paul, much like you were mentioning earlier, we were both raised Catholic. And so our second book, Hell No, Reincarnation, is really how we kind of reconciled our childhood beliefs with what we now know. And we did a lot of different research. The first thing is I'm going to just leave you with an idea, which is a just God who is like a loving parent. Is he going to give you one chance? Do you throw your own child out when they swear the first time? Do they go to hell for all eternity? Do you turn them away from you, or do you give them another chance? The God that I was taught is loving and just. And so reincarnation sort of meets both of those criteria. It means that even if you are not such a good person in this life, God's going to give you another chance to fix that. And you're going to face some of the karma that you've caused, and you need to overcome some adversity because you may have caused adversity to others in the past, and you're going to get another chance because is a child who dies in 5 minutes after they're born, is that long enough for God to judge? Is 60 years enough to judge? one life, two lives, maybe it takes 42 before God decides that you've really given you enough chances to learn the lessons that you need. And he always gives you another chance. And if you talk about our other book, you start to look at things. Look at the Old Testament, Paul. What did God do? God made a covenant with Adam. And then what happened? Adam failed. And then he made a covenant with Abraham, and Abraham failed. Then he made a covenant with Noah, and Noah failed. And then he made a covenant with Moses, and the people, the Israelites, failed again. Then he made a covenant with King David, and they failed again. And not in one of those chances did God say, "You're not my people anymore, and I quit." Or we're not going, or you failed and you've worshipped idols, but I'm going to send you to hell. He always gave them another chance. And if you start to then look what happens, you find that in Judaism, reincarnation is a normal tenet. They don't speak about it a lot, but all of those who study the Kabbalah all believe in reincarnation. And then you look at the world and you find 33% of the world's population believes in reincarnation. And then if you look at the early history of the Catholic Church, in the year 200 AD, or 170 years after Jesus, the bishop of Alexandria, Egypt, his name was Origen, who wrote most of the early doctrine of the Catholic Church, his writings included that transmigration of the soul was a normal part, that the soul existed before birth and after birth, and that you could return in additional lives. Because, of course, his family line was Jewish, but he converted. So that's at 200 AD. It doesn't happen until 400 AD, when the Roman Catholic Church decides to excommunicate the man who wrote most of the early doctrine of the church, because reincarnation and the atoning death of Jesus didn't seem to match. So if Origen says you were with God before you came to this world, that's also against the Catholic Church. If you can get another chance, that means you're not condemned to hell immediately. And later, or ever. And the church down the line starts still getting a little wishy-washy. They wrote purgatory into the story. You can do some atonement there before, you die and you get judged. And yet the church sold indulgences, which is why Martin Luther shows up. They said, just because you died and you were a sinner, it's okay if your family pays for it. We can promise you're going to get to heaven. Well, that doesn't quite follow any real church doctrine. It's something they added in. And so we started looking at all those kind of things, and we realized that the Catholic Church kept some things they learned from Judaism, wrote some new things they learned. Paul wrote a lot of the stuff on the church, and Paul never met Jesus except through a spiritual vision where he talked to dead people. Because, again, you need to look at that. In the Old Testament, Samuel talks after he has died to King Saul. In the New Testament, Jesus talks to Paul after he's dead and gone. And yet, church teaching is you're not supposed to talk to dead people. Jesus talked to dead people up on the mount. Moses and Isaiah appeared to Jesus, and they transfigured in the light, if you believe everything in the Bible. So Jesus was talking to dead people. And yet the church teaches we're not supposed to be sorcerers and bring up evil and only, conjure up something horrible. Well, the reality is, if you go to the Old Testament again, what you hear is that the word Elohim is used, which is really the name for the Most High God, who was called Yahweh. And then there was, if you read it in Hebrew, there's lesser Yahwehs. And those are really angels. And you read more and you find that they're talking about different levels of angels. So if you have spirit guides, which are really guardian angel kinds that we sort of see, different forms of angels, they start talking about watchers. And everybody thinks the watchers become the Nephilim and all that story that we hear in the book of Enoch. Watchers are just people waiting to come back. So the fallen ones were us, who had to return back to the earth again. And when they return to earth, they mate with the women, and their children are offsprings of fallen angels. Well, they're really offsprings of those people who have died and returned to the earth again. It matches all the stories in the Bible. It matches much of mythology, where they're talking about Zeus as the great god and then many lesser gods. It speaks highly of African literature, who has one main god and many lesser gods or angels. It crosses all religious groups. The Hindus believe in a creator god and then many lesser gods. The story that's been shared is parallel through all of these religions.
Right.
So as we
And
went
so,
through,
I mean, I'm sorry. Previously, you'd mentioned that we had kind of like spirit guides. Now, do these follow you, I guess, throughout the entire time that you're here on Earth? Like every time they come back, do you have the same one, or they just kind of
yes,
filter off, or how does that kind of all work?
Your main spirit guide is with you from the beginning. And you can have other guides. For instance, my sister died in 1992, and she actually is the person that passes people over in our family. She has a job working for God. And my mother is our gatekeeper. What is a gatekeeper? A gatekeeper is someone that keeps negative energy from you. For instance, people that are waiting to return, they have very similar personalities there as they do here. So if you were a stinker here, you're probably a stinker there. And your gatekeeper just keeps them away from you because you're not supposed to hear the future. That can alter your path. That's why you don't listen to mediums and psychics unless they're giving you information
about now.
Yeah, about now or the past, not your future.
Right. Yeah, and it's so my mom died when back in '99. I was about 13 years old, I think. But it's always been kind of a weird thing because everybody around me has always had, I guess, like dreams about her, or like seeing her, or things like that. Even my wife now, I didn't know her at the time when my mom died, but even like right before my son was going to be born, like she had a dream where she was like sitting there talking with my mom, and like they were kind of like talking about things and this and that. So like, I mean, does that kind of I wouldn't say prove that certain people don't come back, but is there like reasons maybe they've just kind of met the end of their time on Earth, like they've learned everything they had to, and they just don't come back and they just kind of follow people around, or like people within the family? Does that
Certainly
happen?
there are people who have finished their path and don't have to come back, Paul. That's really the goal for all of us, is to return back to God as the love that you were created. So the plan here is, we come here to learn and grow. And again, this was the first lesson really that Isabella ever taught us, which is live a life without conceit, selfishness, jealousy, and unforgiveness, and make every choice out of love. When you get to that point, you don't create more lessons. You don't create karma. You don't have to return and live another life because you've now understood and have compassion for everyone. And some of it, Paul, is everybody has been a king and a queen. They've also been poor and paupers. We have
saints and sinners.
We've been black and white. We have one Asian life. We have a Mayan life where we'd be Hispanic. So if you're looking at that, you live on every side of every issue. We've actually been Muslim and Jew and pagan in many of our past lives, so that we will understand how those people think. We were Muslim too, so that we live on each side. We've actually have a group of lives that we look at and has a really interesting pattern. We're Vikings fighting the Scottish. then we're Scottish fighting the English, then we're English again fighting the Scottish, and then we are Viking descendants coming back into the English royalty.
How else can you learn? How else can you fully understand and have
Right.
compassion for another unless you are put into their shoes?
And we've learned that if you know, it's interesting you talked about the Ukraine, but we learned that we would fight on both sides of sometimes even the same war. So you learn that in war, there really can't be a winner because you're on both sides. It's compassion. You know, we're talking about the Ukraine and what's happening with Russia. There will be no winner. People will die on both sides. The world will be worse off. There'll be karma created. It's just a negative thing for everyone.
Now, so you speak about karma. Now, is karma supposed to be kind of a punishing thing? Because that's all you ever hear karma being like you're gonna get yours, or like karma's gonna hit that person. You know, is it meant to be that way?
That's judging. If you say it like that, then that's judging and it's retaliatory. And Isabella tells us that that is not loving and compassionate. Because we don't have to worry about somebody getting theirs. God will make sure through another lifetime that they will learn. If someone, you know, Dave loves to tell this story. If you're mean to the cashier in the grocery store just because you're having a bad day, that's the quickest way to create karma with that person. That seems small, but it isn't. And you could come back again and it be the reverse. So take into consideration everybody that you're around. You probably had them in another life, your soul family. They could have been extremely important to you in a previous life, and you just don't know it. Everybody needs to be treated the same with love and compassion and forgiveness.
And love includes basic human respect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, always. But so I guess one of these things that I'm sure I'll get questions about is like, how does this kind of relate to, I guess, going back more towards the Bible, but like when people talk about like demons and angels and, or, you know, stuff like that, like would demons be like another form of like this planet? I mean, or like angels, would that just kind of be something else completely? I mean, do people come back as demons, or how would that work?
Okay, so the first thing I'll tell you, Paul, and we'll go to, again, this part of this is in Hell No Reincarnation. You know, in the Old Testament, the place called that gets translated into the word hell is called Sheol. In the Jewish faith, Sheol is just a place that dead people go. In Greek mythology, it's Hades. It's just a place dead people go. It's not a place of punishment or pleasure either way. It's the afterlife. The other place in the Old Testament that becomes written about is called the Valley of Gehenna. The Valley of Gehenna is actually a physical place outside of Jerusalem. It's the ditch outside of Jerusalem. And Jerusalem drains down, and that's where their sewage system goes. But in thousands of years ago, the early kings and the early judges of the Israelites would put people to death in the Valley of Gehenna, including their illegitimate children. And many times they would burn them. There was also spontaneous combustion because that's where all the trash went. And so there would be fires burning there. They would throw their enemies in there. They would burn people in there. And so it became known as the place of ever-burning death. But it was a physical, actual place.
Okay.
When it got to the King James Bible, and they were doing the final English translations, they went in and they changed the name of Sheol, Hades, and the Valley of Gehenna to the word hell. And why did they use hell? Because King James's wife was of Germanic origin, and the pagan god of the underworld's name was Helya. So they picked Helya for hell as the place that bad dead people would go.
Okay.
So karma is not punishment. Karma is another chance to reach your potential.
It's to learn compassion. So
Right.
now I'm going to tell you a quick story because this will make it sound a little bit like an eye for an eye, but during meditation, I got to see my father's last past life review. And in the last 3 lives that he had, one life, he was a slave trader. And he stole people from Africa and chained them into the bottom of his boat and split families apart and brought them across to Bermuda and then to the Americas and sold them. In the next life that my father had, his wife died during childbirth and he was split from his family. In the life as my father, wonderful man, became a high school principal. He was really a very nice guy. And he, the last 20 years of his life, he got Parkinson's that was very severe and was chained to a wheelchair. Now, that's not being chained in the bottom of a boat, but it's being put restrictions on. And he had to overcome the Parkinson's to remain positive, upbeat, and still be a good person.
Because it's not what happens in life. It's how we choose to react to it.
Right. Right. So, yeah, obviously he wasn't being punished for anything, but he had to kind of experience both sides of the coin.
Exactly.
Just to kind of see how that worked out on both ends.
Yeah. And another one I like to tell Paul is sometimes we return in the same family line. So I want you to imagine that there's a man who's an alcoholic and he has a son. And so his son has hardship because of the alcoholism. And that son becomes an alcoholic because it runs in families sometimes. His father dies of cirrhosis. And that young man who also became an alcoholic suddenly has a son. And it's his father returning to him. And now that man has a father who's an alcoholic. And somebody has to step up and stop the chain of events. So this time, he has to become stronger and overcome the alcoholism to break the pattern. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Same thing with child abuse. Somebody has to be the one who stops it. So if you were an abuser, you may come back and it may be your job to try to stop the abuse this time.
Or you might be on the other end. We do know people that have been a male and an abuser, and then they come back as a female who's abused.
Right. Yeah. It's not necessarily punishing that person. It's just they have to experience both sides of, what they went through. So
yes,
you can better understand. That makes sense. I mean, but then that kind of opens up a can of worms as far as like, if you're not really being punished for anything, like what's the point of being good in this life? You know what I mean? Like, it's like, if you're going to be given like another chance, like what's to stop people from just doing whatever they want and like, like acting up how they want. And I can see people like, I guess, seeing how that would be a problem for like a lot of people, like, so what's like the point of behaving or like wanting to learn how to do anything if you can just be given like another shot at life, So,
well, if you talk to people who have near-death experiences,
right,
and they talk to someone that they call God or Jesus or spiritual beings, and they're told your path is not complete, you have to go back. Most of them will tell you, we did not want to go back. We're completely engulfed in love and happiness, and we do not want to come back to Earth. That's why.
Yes, if it's completely love, if love is everywhere and it's completely without wants or needs, if you have no wants or needs, you can't be bored, you can't be unhappy, you can't be dissatisfied. Life is a struggle for everyone always. Even if you're having fun, there still is a struggle. There's something you have to overcome in almost every life. There is no one on the earth that hasn't had to overcome COVID the last 2 years. There's no one on this earth who isn't looking at what's happening in the Ukraine or what's happening in Palestine and Israel. All of us have to worry about what is going to happen. And the other thing, Paul, if we aren't doing the right thing and taking care of this earth, and we keep polluting the earth and we do those things, if you throw the trash out your window as you're driving down the road, someday you're going to reincarnate into a world that is trashed, and there's nowhere to come back to. So there's always some way that you want to be off of this planet and off of this trip and off of this road and overcome the karma that you've created, because that's where the reward is. The reward is not in this life.
Right. No, it definitely isn't. I've seen a lot of cases like that where that's not the case, but it's actually funny that you mentioned like near-death experiences. We spoke with a gentleman by the name of David Ditchfield a long time ago. He had a near-death experience where he actually got run over by a train, and he survived, thank God. And he told a story about how he had died twice, like in the operating table, and they managed to save him. Came back, and he spoke about when he was there, the same thing. Like, he did not want to come back. He wanted to stay there. Like, he just didn't want to be here anymore, and he had to come back. Now, David had never done anything, I guess, artsy in his life. Like, he never knew how to paint or draw or like how to do anything like that. Now he writes symphonies and he can paint like if he had gone to art school for years and years and years. He's a really incredible painter. He does all kinds of amazing things now. Now on that kind of setup there, now do our near-death experiences kind of pit stops in your life to say, look, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing in this world, like shaping up and let's get back on track. And on the same note, when people die really early in life, could that be that they have indeed met what they're supposed to be doing on earth and they're taken away because their experience is over with?
Well, yes and no. In Dave's and my past life, we were brother and sister in Chicago. I was Katie. I was 6 years old. His name was Johnny. He was 4. And it was Christmas Eve, 1944. We were playing on our balcony, our 3-story staircase. Our mother was wrapping Christmas presents, and we both fell to our death. We broke our necks. And of course, when Dave got those memories and we asked Isabella about it, we said, what could we possibly have done at that young age? And she said, well, it wasn't your lesson. Your father was a bomber pilot in World War II, and he was doing his job, yet he had to learn that he was not just bombing soldiers. He was bombing people, doctors, lawyers, regular, normal people. And sometimes the lesson is severe, but you have to understand it. So, it's not always that you're done. And a lot of times when you come back for a short period of time, it is somebody else's lesson.
You've come to help somebody else learn. The other thing that people a lot of times will ask, Paul, is, of course you get another chance. So what's the big deal? If you're really that unhappy, why can't you commit suicide? Because if you commit suicide, you didn't learn your lesson in this life, and you've got to come back to the exact same lesson. So if you think life is horrible, life is still horrible when you come back in the next life because you didn't overcome. So suicide doesn't serve your purpose because you're going to come back to the same lesson you still need.
Right. Yeah. And that's kind of, I guess, maybe unfortunate in a way that we're tied into other people's, I guess, karmic story that, like if, like for you guys that you died at such an early age in your past life, but that was attached to like your father at the time. So that kind of stinks in a way that you could be attached to somebody else's life just to teach them a lesson in a way, but it's taken out on you.
No, because God
really
asks you.
Yeah, God will tell you.
God asks you if you're willing to do it. And
do something to help someone else.
Yeah, and you agree to it. And remember, we're infinite human beings.
Yeah, so there's no, if you die young, who cares?
Who cares?
there's really no
Right.
fear of death.
Yeah,
And if you
that's
start
true.
to look again at near-death experiences and reincarnation experiences, all of them are so consistent that you start to realize there must be something to consciousness existing outside of your body. And those people who have astral projection experiences, those people who are connecting with the spiritual world, who have some sort of mediumship ability, they're all traveling outside of their personal self.
Right.
And Paul,
yeah, we actually spoke with Preston Dennett, which was an amazing guest we had last episode. That we're talking about out of body experiences, and I completely forgot that he had mentioned that as well. That we're actually asked whether we want to come back or not for whatever kind of purpose, and we actually agree to be here. So it's not like we were just kind of picked out of a hat and then here you go. So that actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, God, I don't know that there's anybody who turns God down if God says, will you come back?
Right. Yeah, no, he definitely wouldn't, even if you actually didn't want to, but there's no way you'd actually be able to get around that one, which is good. I mean, like you said, if we're really are infinite, we're just here to suffer for a short period of time. And what's our time on earth? It's really nothing really. So it's so short, which is great.
Isabella says that time here seems like it's long, but it really is nothing. And the other reason that we don't want to come back, you'll love this. Isabella says that being in heaven is like perpetual orgasm.
Oh, well, I don't know why anybody would want to leave then.
See?
That's right.
See?
What a bunch of fools.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I mean, that's really, hopefully we kind of get to, and I've always had this kind of weird feeling. I don't wish for death. Like I don't want to die or anything like that. But I do know that when my time comes, I won't be sad about it or upset. Like I'm not looking forward to it, but when it comes, like I won't be upset that it's here. I'd be upset, maybe a little sad, obviously, for my son and stuff like that. But
correct.
I'd be more sad that they're going to be the ones that have to stay here and I get to move on. So that's kind of how that works. So hopefully one day we finish up what we have to do here and they take us out of here because this world is falling apart. I'll tell you what.
Okay.
True.
Well, it seems like the world's falling apart, but I've got to tell you, the world has grown over these thousands of years. We actually live in the least violent time in all history. Per capita, there's less violence in the world. There's less poverty in the world. There's less death, less disease than there ever has been. So even though as a society we seem to pick up on everything that's horrible, the world is actually much better than it was 2,000 years ago. 2,000 years ago, you got up and you spent the next 16 hours trying to find one meal. And then preparing that meal and starting the fire with a stick and hoping that you would cover your head with some sort of branch tonight so it didn't rain on you.
Yeah. No, definitely. We're in like the best time throughout history right now. I remember thinking back a while back was if I died and I came back, I would hope that I come back in this time period again because throughout history it's been rough, a lot of rough times. So
yep, and you can even look back on just the lessons of history, and they're the same lessons of reincarnation. People who battle and fight and kill each other, people who abuse each other, people who control each other. Whether you're talking about enslavement by a king who has a fiefdom and has small people with small little plots of land and they're giving 30% of their crop of corn to the king, to slavery, it's the same story that we're all trying to overcome, which is somebody's conceit over someone else.
Not to be owned.
Right. No, definitely not. Yep. So, as we kind of wind down our time here, can you now the books, are they only available on your websites, or are those available on Amazon as well?
Yes, they're available on Amazon's, Barnes and Noble, Target, Walmart, everybody, they're available, but there are links on our webpage to those sites, because you can also go to your local small bookstore and order them, and they will come. So that if you want to support your local bookstore, because it's been rough on everybody during the COVID pandemic, support those little small businesses too. You can order them there too.
Right. Yeah, definitely don't go through those big chains that they got to stay open during the whole thing. But yeah, so definitely everybody go ahead and head over to thegiftofpastlives.com, where you can find the books as well. And like you mentioned, on Amazon and anywhere else, if you want to pick those up a lot faster than actually looking for them somewhere else. And then we'll have the link and everything down below in the show notes and during this episode, thegiftofpastlives.com. Twitter is @MyBooks, Instagram as well. And then they have the Facebook. We'll have everything linked down below as well. Dave and Carla, I really appreciate you guys' time today. I really appreciate stepping in with me and chatting about this. It was definitely interesting. It's been a topic that I've really enjoyed for a long time, and I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks a lot, Paul.
Absolutely. I really appreciate it. Everybody else, I really appreciate your time today. If you guys are catching us on YouTube, like I mentioned before, and you aren't already a subscriber, please consider hitting that subscribe button and sharing the link to the show as well. If you like what we do here, sharing it with a friend, family, anybody else. We'll be back on Friday with Jason again. We'll be talking about the Ukraine and everything that's going on there. So that should be fun. But yeah, we'll have the link to all the social media down below. Like I mentioned, please hit that like button and the bell icon so you guys don't miss an episode in the future. You can catch us on the run at Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio at Truth Defender Podcasts. And you can shoot us an email if you have any guest or topic recommendations to thetruthDefender1776 at gmail.com. I really appreciate you guys. Everybody stay safe out there, stay blessed, and most of all, stay frosty.
Perfect.